Hello. My name is Eric Michael, and I'm here today to share with you the most beautiful and magical, tragic, hilarious story. You see, not long ago, I was wandering through this desert here when I came across this man. And I found it most peculiar, considering it was a dark and stormy night. And it was at a time of the year where not many people venture out here. But most peculiar of all was that he was standing atop a rather steep cliff face, and he was entirely naked. So naturally I feared the worst, and I screamed out to him, "No, don't!" And he whipped around and said, "The fuck are you on about? Can't a man piss into the abyss in peace anymore?" And I was taken aback, and I said, "I am so sorry. You see, I just am very high on these peyote buttons that I found not far from here, and I thought that you were going to jump." And he abruptly stopped me and said, "You stupid fucking asshole. I have been harvesting those peyote buttons for years." And I said, "Oh my goodness gracious, I am so sorry. I thought that they were fair game, considering I found them in the fucking middle of nowhere." But back to my original thought, what on earth are you doing up there on that steep cliff face? I thought that you were going to jump to your death. And he said, "No, you see, I'm just thinking about life." And I said, "Well, that's rather interesting considering you're entirely naked and it's a dark and stormy night. By the way, what, pray tell, is that you're holding in your hand?" And he raised this book. And he said, "This is the story of life." And I found it odd, considering he did not say, "This is the story of my life." And I said, "Curious as it be, what is it about?" And again, he replied, "You stupid idiot, I just told you. It's the story of life." And I said, well, what are you going to do with it out here naked in the desert on a steep cliff face?" And he said, "Well, I was thinking about throwing it into the abyss and then pissing on it, but wound up having to piss first, and now I do not know what to do." And I said, "Well, why would you do such a thing to the story of life?" And he said, "Because I fear that if I tell it, I will find my ruin." And I thought to myself, that's rather cryptic, but I didn't want to question him further. And I said, "Okay, well, if you don't want to tell it, can I tell it?" And he said, "Why would you want to tell it?" And I said, "Well, it's certainly not because I'm blitzed off my goddamn camp chair high on peyote buttons. It's just that I rather fancy telling stories. And you seem like an interesting fella out here naked on this steep cliff face, pissing into the wind. And I'd rather enjoy telling it." And he said, "Okay, shit, fuck it. I don't really care. Suppose it's better than throwing it into the abyss." And I said, "Thank you." And he handed me the book. And I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Icarus. Icarus Mikhail." And I said, "Well, it was very nice meeting you, Icarus." And I turned to leave, leaving him to his ventures. And before I depart, I turned to him one last time and I said, "Icarus, is the story real?" And he said, "It is told that all truths are but half-truths. So, I suppose this story is only real to the extent of one's belief in the unreal." And at this point, I was so fed up with this cryptic nincompoop that I just told him, "Okay, buddy, thank you. I am out of here. Now that I have the book, I'd rather not like to see you anymore. I do not know what you're capable of. Please do not jump off that cliff." I'm scramming, I'm skedaddling my way out of here. I will tell your story. This story of life. And that was the last I ever saw of Icarus. And this is that story. The story of life. It's called The Stars Above. And I would like to express my most sincere apologies in advance if I do stumble about my words while speaking this story. You see, Icarus wrote all 280 pages of it in Crayola crayon. Shout out today's sponsor, Crayola crayon. So it's not entirely legible. I'm also venturing to assume he not only wrote it in Crayola crayon, but that he was also high on his peyote buttons whilst writing it in Crayola crayon. So yes, apologies in advance for anything I may stumble about within this story. But once more, it's called The Stars Above. And this is Icarus's prologue. They say there are 3 types of people who choose to brave the barren desert: prophets, prospectors, and madmen. I'm tapped dry of divine revelation, and the only digging done has been for a modest latrine. Alas, I must be mad, although it's believed the omens say otherwise. Northeast of Reno, Nevada, just shy of the dusty nights and shimmering flats of Black Rock Desert, lay a land riddled with mysticism. In the heart of Paiute Reservation sits an ancient body of water known as Pyramid Lake, a place the sun rose dawning time, bringing life to First Nations people, and only sets at the will of our moon's desire. The air is bewitched with enchanted songs of self-recognition, like spirits whisking in the wind. Whether one arrives to lay their shame to rest, knock at parts unknown, find oneself, lose oneself, or chase a mirage hoped real, answers once sought begin to unravel. It's here dreams come to transcend reality, and far-wandered souls upon a well-worn path seek cleansing. That's why I've arrived, to purge sorrow and speak of tall tales beside a crackling campfire, stories only told over hallowed grounds rich in folklore, to reflect on tragedy and triumph, knowing it was only my deepest fears which birthed my greatest adventure. A fantastical quest of heroism, championing pain in search of love and forgiveness, where the lessons of years past have bled into those of the morrow. Think of it as you would a wondrous dream, one fallen awake to. Remain skeptic, yet curious in its interpretation. Much like our ever-evolving selves, the following will be told in strides of growth by several different aspects of myself. This is the labyrinth of life, left solely to us, the architects, to understand it. Upon this vast lake, I call Monument Rock home, a breathtaking cove with steep hill that drops to a beach enclosed by towering tufa formations on opposite ends of the shore, a secluded playground for the adventurer seeking isolation, where the world beyond man waits. I've sprinkled tobacco encircling my camp, I walk on this land and sleep on this land. I take from this land and give to this land. I appreciate this land and learn from this land. I ask of this land. So, I pray to this land. I offer my respect to the four great winds of north, south, east, and west. They carry my call, this land's ancient tongue, a song of serenity. Over the deep blue depths of which I am peering, a hold of a life I am finally steering. There's trash scattered from previous campers. Water has risen over the past week, and dried sagebrush has lined the shore. My home is a mess. If to receive any clarity, it must be tidied up. A war crow watches over as I make rounds along the cove. His feathers are torn, his beak jagged. Surely, he must have fought for his survival. I know this crow, an omen, having been here together many times before. He perches atop Monument Rock as the mother crow rests in the lunar-carved stone, feeding her 3 young in the nest wove into the cliffside. The war crow caws at the absurdity below. "Organize, organize, organize," I yell to him. "Foolish crow, there must be organization to this mess." There's an impassioned, harmonious dance that must be shared between chaos and order for balance to be kept. Without such duality, the world itself would fall to ruins. Just who or what is this crow taking notice of these endeavors? Perhaps an apparition of past, meeting me dead in the eyes. He either knows something or is up to something. The matter must be solved, lest wits are lost. Pink Floyd is playing, having choked on my cigarette singing aloud to "Wish You Were Here," followed by a violent cough of black mucus. One must spit out the demons. A couple has arrived, walking the ridgeline above. The young man has a big camera in his hands and she's wearing a fancy dress. I'm very animalistic and territorial while in my space, like a rabid dog plagued by the bewitchment of his bone. This is my beach now, and a hind leg has been lifted to it. Perhaps they're another omen testing the nature of compassion. "How's it going?" I yelled without response. Where did these two even come from? I wondered. Prom? They must have arrived with their expensive camera and ballroom gown for that one perfect social media snapshot, before leaving to accumulate tallies of popularity. One shouldn't pass judgment. But still, it's hard not to wince at the cruel shortcomings towards a digital world bastardizing any sight of our innermost selves. A vile portrayal of what's become the new American dream, chasing overnight success and instant fame as influential narcissists. An insatiable hunger and unquenchable thirst of which serves no other purpose other than fueling a total sense of inadequacy. Mindless drones sell their body for $1 while docile lemmings stand proud before sheep-herding cell phones set to record. This mentality, amongst others of equal toxicity, very well may become the bane to humanity's catastrophic existence. Many people feel it's technology that's pushing us forward as an intellectual species, but I refuse to believe it's doing anything other than setting mankind back, both mentally and emotionally. Technology is no more than a tool, yet it's being used to define the entirety of our being. How were we so blindly misled, and when did our values become so twisted? Many have forgotten what it means to be human, and I fear those who come next won't even get the chance. Those days once spoken with grace and humility are long lost, where interactions were made without condition or expectation. Color me a naysayer, but these are sad times. I suppose we're living in a digital world, and I am no digital girl. I'm not a cynical person, but rather enjoy humoring in the guilty pleasures of one. It makes for fascinating conversation. Talk about a duel of banter with an unarmed opponent. They never saw it coming. If anything, I'd consider myself a realist with a real abstract imagination. I've always been a hopeful person, even during moments spent shredding in the shallows of my own self-loathing. But one could argue some of the best art stems from misery. What might they be thinking? I wondered as they paced back and forth in search of that next pose in perfect light. Perhaps something along the lines of, "Who is this hysteric caveman? Why is he moving dried brush from one pile to another pile, in the middle of nowhere? Why is this creature's malnourished body covered in ash? Why is he yelling at that crow about the beach being unorganized as he laughs and vomits between his legs, with a porcelain monkey in his hands?" It's called a purge, but is likely being perceived as a manic episode. My road dog and adopted son is a porcelain monkey, named Monkey, who was found hitchhiking with his surfboard on Highway 395 in early 2018. While being quick to bond, he's a rambunctious bitch and a pestering specimen. One might call him an expression of myself at any given time or perceived reality, or that he simply provides dialogue during moments otherwise unable to voice. Tomatoes, potatoes. I'd rather speak to animals and inanimate objects than real people, just as I'd rather keep sight on the sky, moon, and stars above. Does that make me insane? Perhaps, but approval isn't sought, only understanding, albeit slight. Madness is living in this faulty design, pretending day in and day out that our purpose is to do what we've been told. Obey, adhere, fall in line, and go with the grain. We've lost sovereignty as a society, given away our power, and abolished individuality. Fantasy is my reality. The world I live in is the one created every lonesome day woken to this rot-blanketed society. We live in a nation governed by crooks who shove bread and circus down our throats and spoon-feed us lies, yet we indulge gluttonously. Our paradigm is a constant state of self-destruction, division, and sedation of our own volition. The only thing making any sense at all anymore is the love we feel and share, that which stems from our world within and universe beyond. And like love, to fully understand oneself is to both perceive and create true magic, that which cannot be given, but possessed, cannot be taught, but discovered. The fluidity of alchemy. So, why is it that I find myself here? Beauty is bountiful in these parts. The Sierra Nevadas provide great peace within its endless trees and comforting meadows. But the forest is all too often forgiving. Unlike here, these lands are barren and merciless, the desert, unforgiving. Even this lake is tainted with salt and brings no replenishment. The overbearing noise which drowns this world out is non-existent, and there's nothing to distort nor deceive perception other than tricks of the mind. The desert reveals one's reflection greater than any other place, whether believed sane or so neck-high in your own shit that there's no differentiating crazy from not. The birds here speak to me, the land listens to me, and the water welcomes me. They're the spirits who whisper softly into my ear. You've got it kinda sorta together, Icarus, having chosen the path which leads back to the road you were always destined for. Just as the war crow watches over me, I watch over him. We're unified without rhyme or reason. This lends sure sight into who I am inside, the gratitude carried and love held. A love that can only be defined in an undeveloped language, lacking true emotional connection to definition, as unconditional. Just as the war crow fought for his life, as have I to reach this understanding. To fight mustn't always stem from aggression, just as wars waged aren't always with others, but an internal battle against the foe of oneself. We're living through times of conflict, separation, and immense suffering, yet the agony accompanying such tribulations hasn't only been physical, but emotional and psychological. There's good reason as to why it's difficult for so many to cope with their internal existence. We've simply never been taught how to deal with it, and our pain goes misdirected. Every day we wake to fight. We fight for love to feel, air to breathe, and courage to own. We must fight, for we must live. I was born unto insufferable pain and lived my entire life growing to understand it, if only to show the damned they hold strength within themselves to overcome it. I didn't survive a life of brutalizing trauma, but thrived on it. Although in today's world, cultural conditioning has made speaking of trauma and the long-lasting effects it holds over us shameful and taboo. We fear judgments passed from the mere thought of speaking on such personal tragedy. How will our peers, friends, or family look at us after knowing those deep, dark secrets we keep locked away, forever eating at our soul? And how could they possibly understand? It's much easier to stay quiet, holding on to that which casts us into the all-consuming void and bottomless pits of nihility. All the while, we do no more than work with determination to demonize and ostracize our own growth of boundless discovery. For a long time, I'd believed destined to write another dull copy of the endlessly listed, cash-grab genre of self-help books, the kind you can find any schmuck standing before in the metaphysical aisle, flipping through pages in hopes it'll solve the riddles to every reason they wake up hating themselves. But the thing about self-help, which is supposed to be referred to as self-love, is that those lessons cannot be bought, traded, given, or received. The voyage to self-love must be earned through perpetual leaps of intensive trials and tribulations. It's a hero's journey through our internally created personal hell and back, not a destination, but the paths we carve through pits of despair and fiery torments of the mind, to find at the end of one's tunnel the annihilation of an illusion our society has bred us to abide by. Only then will we find the love that has laid dormant in our soul, trying so desperately to reach out and take us by the throat, screaming, "I've been with you your entire fucking life." No, self-love will never be found within a book. Its discovery lies in the path itself, the trails we lay, and the story we make it. Before moving on, I'd like to ask but one thing of you. Take nothing said nor action displayed too serious. My sense is inherently senseless. No word is without fault, and no gesture but humble imperfection. I wish to be transparent without coming off as a pretentious, egotistical prick. So, I'll state that regardless of my self-inflicted abusive tendencies, I'm well traversed. A bookish lad who's peered behind too many curtains, having killed the cat of curiosity upon the plains of the etheric. There are some answers we are not meant for in this lifetime. I've lived with the natives, fed off the land, sat with medicine men, breathed in spirit, and gagged up the hilarity of hypocrisy. Too often I've gazed into the fleeting eyes of death, having helplessly seen many the dim light of one's life perish with sorrow. I've searched high for purpose, low for meaning, and every which way in between for reason, finding only what is left unspoken. I've taught many things, but am no teacher. Wisdom lie within. I've presented many avenues for self-care, but am no healer. Remedies lie within. While being someone able to present a door, each must walk through it for themselves. Over many years I've traveled many paths, and many respectable-natured people have referred to me by many names, none of which I feel worthy to hold. I don't know or claim much. Our collective mind is comprised of knowledge both innately complex and universally simple, yet innately simple and universally complex. I am but a wanderer within the human experience, an eager and clownish student of vast practice, who carries an assortment of trinkets and tinkering tools. I am both a somebody and a nobody, a court jester none the wiser, appointed unto a kingdom of shackles and chain. I believe in several ways, shapes, and forms that the spiritual revolution of today has presented itself as a strange joke we shan't adhere too closely. One must tread carefully, lest smitten for entangled contradictions in tune with the mantra, Shamalama Ding Dong. Then again, a great deal of people might consider me a mentally unsound trickster with an ace up his sleeve, and I suppose rightfully so. My words, actions, and beliefs often appear paradoxical. Differentiation is solely up to the reflection of your own interpretation. With me you board but a vessel of experience upon the choppy seas of insanity. I simply wish to impart upon the world a story that will help others better understand themselves. What I've come to know for absolute certainty in life is this: diddly squat. However, I've a very deep understanding of pain, the fear it leaves, the walls it builds in our subconscious, and, most importantly, how to bring them down. The sun's begun a slow descent as the call of a red-tailed hawk echoes in the distance. There's a peculiarity amidst, the greatest omen to unfold. What I now overlook isn't a desert at all, but a lush oasis, the ground itself gleaming like pools of rich jade. The great deity has set the sky on fire, giving radiance to dry foliage below, painted, sculpted, and brought life in the eyes of our Creator. The lake shimmers with an unfathomable blue, stretching across this vast sea to the tufa needles which tower over bedrock, like glistening jewels scraping the heavens. While not a religious person, I must wonder, is there a face unbeknownst to man of God's image? If so, is it one I'm meeting now? Perhaps it's here I unknowingly seek him, for it was here he once sought me. Have I attested for the sins of man's life and come to deserve the likes of this performance? If standing here having truly done so, then such sins will have never been regrettable, and my life never more lived. I've circled Monument Rock like a psych patient confined to a straitjacket. It's selfish to keep focus on any one area without disrespecting another. My heart aches, longing to gaze upon so much more than eyes are able. There's no contraption of which to capture this otherworldly phenomena. 'Tis a play reserved for one soul. Deer gallop to and fro. Cottontails pounce bush to bush. Flocks of seagulls, pelicans, and geese have flooded each shore. The war crow and 3 sparrows fly rings above. Clouds stretch over the distant nightingales as a gentle glow of twilight nears, thinning the veil. Fleeting seconds which blur sensibility from the supernatural, and tragically mundane realities scream towards our most delightful fantasies. In this precious moment, I sing their names aloud for the entire world to hear, the 2 who led me to remember. I find myself here to find myself, and where I am, they'll always reside. The half moon sits high, waiting patiently on stars to help illuminate the night. I now rest upon my beach of solitude as the war crow watches over. He knows, as I do, that I am him, and he is me. He knows, as I do, that we must now rest, for come the morrow there'll be much more work to do, and a story to finally begin. Well, well, well. Icarus is most definitely a strange cat, you know? But he's got a pretty remarkable story. So, if you're interested, please come on back and join me again as we have ourselves a little pilgrimage through this desert whilst telling a most beautiful story called The Stars Above. Thank you.